This is producer and isn't being recorded. We're fine.
Oh, okay, then we're fine. Okay. Son of a bitch.
Christ.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good.
It's been like a month since we
literally
recorded
the
an
only
episode.
thing Yeah, Jesus Christ. Apologies to the listeners. Greg had to escape the White Pharaoh.
Yeah, all 6 of you who are listening, I promise we're going to go back to normal now. But I'm in, for those of you who listen to this show and somehow don't listen to Guerrilla Radio Show, I live in Vermont now.
Yeah, the White Pharaoh's an imminent threat instead of being an actual threat.
I'm in a state run by another White Pharaoh.
Another white. I was gonna say White Dynast, but that's not great.
What episode number is this? 5?
4. 4. Because
right, I'm gonna do a little. No, this is episode.
I think this might be 3 because this is 4 because we had
definitely 4. We did Alex episode 3.
Yeah, Alex was episode 3. Then we did Rome before that, and we did our first episode, which this will be kind of a continuation of.
It will. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of Red Connections, currently untitled. I am one of your hosts, Greg. I am joined, as always, by my beautiful, beautiful boy, my co-host, John. Say hello. John. And today we will be catching you up a little bit on what's been going on in my actual personal world for the last couple of weeks, and then we will launch into what will hopefully be seen from the outside as a continuation of episode 1, but from the inside will seem more and more like we are ranting on and on and on about things that we're not 100% sure of, but definitely have strong opinions about. So please sit back, relax, grab at least one beer, and strap in for the ride.
Fuck.
We're gonna leave that cough in.
Wait, did I mute my mic? Yeah, I'm fine. I had some caramel corn because my cousins are in Boy Scouts and we get this shit. So
caramel corn. I haven't had caramel corn in so long.
Yeah.
John, when are we gonna get you to get a mustache like me?
What? What's up?
Many of you haven't
not
seen
parse
John,
that.
for those of you at home, but John has a beautiful, luxurious, almost Duck Dynasty, but not trashy type beard. But I'm just saying, for those of you at home who know what I look like, I've got what I call the Park Bench 9000 up here on my upper lip. Jaden would be so mad if they ever hear me say that out loud again. But I think it's a good look. But anyway. So
for those of you at home, Greg is currently basically filming a dashboard car video, like those like middle-aged Trump supporters do when they talk about the new Q drop. That's what Greg looks like right now.
This is a visual bit. Nobody's gonna get this at home, but you got soft hands, brother. Hold on, I gotta get it from the right angle. You got soft hands, brother. You know I work 75 hours a fucking week, and none of you fucking understand what it's like to be me, a hard-working Republican man, and these gosh darn libtards taking my jobs.
Greg put on his sunglasses for those of you at home.
And I put the phone down on my lap so you could think I'm driving on the freeway. But let me catch you guys up a little bit on my own life, because this is a podcast, and the whole point of it is we're a little bit parasocial with it. Just a little bit. So my partner and I packed our bags just a little bit after our last episode finished recording. And we began the long and arduous journey of driving 2,600 miles across America, from the great state of Utah to the greater state of Vermont,
I wouldn't
where
call
I now
Utah a
reside.
great state.
They're both great states.
It's an okay state,
I'm turning over a new leaf. I've decided to not be a hater anymore.
at least until you start talking about Chicago.
Well, you know, clearly not allowed to talk about Chicago. But yeah. No, I do miss Utah a little bit. Those of you at home might be going, "Why would you miss that place? All you did was rip on it." Well, my boys are there, and I miss going to the bar and watching the Ravens lose in front of my Ravens fan friend, while the rest of us make fun of him and dance in a circle. And I don't know no Utah ski season for me this year. I got to do the Vermont ski season, which is supposedly nice, if it snows. Um, but I am enjoying my new home in the Green Mountain State. I, I said this a bunch when I lived in Utah. I wish it was more diverse here, and oh boy, do I wish it was more fucking diverse here. I looked up the stats on this. Vermont has 600,000 people in it. Period. 8,000 of those are not white people.
That fucking sucks.
Yeah, yeah. If only for the weird lack of diversity, there's also just a weird. There's like just a complete and utter lack of any kind of food that isn't burger. There's 900 kinds of burger here, but the burgers are good. All right, let's not. I'm not gonna hate on it, but like, this is Crackerville, USA. Luckily for
Yeah.
me, and because I don't really give a fuck, because I'm me. I live in a town called White River Junction. So go ahead and Google that, everybody. White River Junction lies directly on the border of New Hampshire, a far more diverse and normal place. So I do get to just drive 5 minutes across the Connecticut River into a town that has a Target and a Walmart and a Best Buy and like everything you could ever ask for. But on my side of the river, there is nothing. There's a bar. There's 3 bars, actually. And a pretty decent pizza place run by 2 Greek guys.
That's always a bonus.
Yeah,
Is the inexplicable Greek people,
and it's
which
walkable.
will be relevant to the later parts of this episode.
Yeah. The
There's a
Greeks are
place
only
called the
relevant for
first.
Alexander the Great and I don't know, attempting to claim all Mediterranean food as their own.
Yeah. I'm just looking at Google Maps here. The only real place of note that is on Google Maps is a place called Big Fatty's Barbecue.
Oh, it's fucking good.
I bet
Yeah,
you
it's
doxing
quite
yourself.
nice.
Yeah.
My old
town of
address
New
is still the
Hampshire.
LLC's address. It's also the return address for any merch I've ever sent.
Remember when there was merch? That like year-long period?
Yeah. But let's get back. Let's start. I will start to go back on track here in a second. Because I do just want to say one thing that the love of my life and I did today, which was we went to an apple orchard. Okay. I have a bag of these fucking apples. They're so good. They're so good. And no trip is ever complete in the anywhere north of the Mason-Dixon line, apparently, without also getting booze. And so for this episode, everyone, I will be drinking Patch Orchard's Hint of Maple 16-ounce hard cider with maple syrup.
What's the ABV on that bad boy?
6.4.
Ooh, nice.
Let's take a little sip. Oh my fucking god. I need 24 of these. This is seriously, I've never had this before, everybody at home. This is quite good. And this whole orchard, this whole deal, is about 10 minutes from my house.
They're going to ruin you.
It's a slower pace of life out here, man. But it is quite a breath of fresh air, I will say.
I can imagine. For today's episode, I'm drinking water.
It's okay. I'll handle the booze for us.
Because it is early afternoon my time, well, mid-afternoon my time, and I am an insane Calvinist who has very strict rules about when I can and cannot drink.
It's 5:13 p.m. Eastern time. I can have a beer.
Yeah, Greg's good. I'm not. But I'm saving the
This is
beer for
also our
movie night.
first episode being quite literally as far apart as we can get on the fucking map.
No, you would have we could get farther apart if you were in Miami.
I guess, but we're at the same latitude now,
Yeah,
you and I.
almost exactly. Yeah. No,
I took
actually, you're
I
further
90.
north than I am
I took
because
I-90 all the
Washington.
way here.
What? Wait, did you? Okay,
Yeah.
well, I think I-90 might be at a slight diagonal because I am like
Well, I mean, it
80%
goes around
sure.
the Great Lakes, but it comes back up.
Vermont is a slightly north of
Where
Washington.
I
Yes,
am
it
in
is.
Vermont, is it north of you?
Let's see here. Because Seattle / the east side is about smack dab in the middle of Washington. And okay, actually, no, you are at the exact same latitude as me. I am an
Nice.
idiot.
I'm blowing you a kiss directly to the west.
All right, so I can tell that from that you are probably facing. I'm not going to. They're facing south right now.
Yes, I am.
All right. Okay.
We're autistic, dude.
Just a bit.
Just a
a
little.
bit. Dude, I impulse purchased a bunch of like $200 of Warhammer books on Sunday. I'm cooked.
You're Henry Cavill.
I am Henry Cavill, and they're not even like
You're
normal
spending
Warhammer
Henry
books.
Cavill money on books too.
Yeah, it's there's not even normal Warhammer. It's like Horus Heresy stuff. It's the deep shit.
I was
Like,
going crazy with it.
yeah.
But yeah, before, like, we're gonna blow time here because we're terrible at this. But
Yeah.
the worst part about moving here for me, really, truly, is that it took me like 6 months to get used to Salt Lake City's very perfect geographic grid. Everything is very much coordinate points on a grid. And now it's like where I grew up, where it's just like, yeah, you take that fucking road about 2 miles. And everybody, no matter where it is or what it is, if you ask someone where this, like, I go into my office and I'll be like, where is this thing you guys keep talking about? It's always about 30 minutes away. That's never right. It's always 45 to an hour.
What is there, like, time dilation that comes with the New Hampshire or Vermont license plate? Like,
I think it's because Salt Lake City is the biggest city any of these people have ever even, like, I'm as close as they've ever gotten to a big city.
By
And so for
proximity to
them,
you.
they're on country time. This is the country, man. It's also the most visible post-NAFTA industrial collapse place I've ever seen.
Ooh. So you're
Like,
deep in the Rust Belt right now.
Well, they have rebounded for sure. Like,
Okay.
this place has rebounded. They have made an economy mainly out of tourism in the summer, skiing in the winter, and obviously, like, Dartmouth University is 5 miles from me, so they've also got like a decent amount of wealth from that. But the whole area is like, you'll be driving and everything will be really nice, but off in the distance, like in the woods a little bit, now it's the woods, is like the remains of a mill on the Connecticut River. Like, this is a mill town.
Yeah.
And it's gone. It's all been gone since 1991 or whatever. When did NAFTA go into effect?
I early 90s. I want to say 91, 92.
Yeah, you can just tell. They're like, they didn't really rebound until probably like 5 years ago. Like, everything is very new here.
Hey.
Kill him. Sounds like he's
dog.
killing himself.
Yeah, he's one of those dogs. Very high strung.
A little guy.
Yeah.
But
I take him in, but he chews on all my wires.
I've gotten asked about I'm wearing the very bright green, Vermont green even, old like Letterman jacket today, but it's from the 1998 Wyoming State Rodeo. It's the champion's jacket for chariot racing.
Yo.
It's so fucking cool, dude. I got this shit at a thrift store in Salt Lake City. It's so fucking cool.
You should wear that shit for when we record the podcast about the sports riots that almost toppled the Byzantine Empire.
I absolutely will. It's already cold here, so.
Ooh. Yeah, it's starting to get chilly here.
It's like 60. It's like 65. It's not. I guess it's not that cold, but I'm used to the desert, so like I'm used to it being like 90 degrees until like late October.
The most post NAFTA collapse town I've ever been in is this place on the coast, on the Washington coast, called Aberdeen. It's where
Oh,
Kurt
I've been to
Cobain is
Aberdeen.
from.
I've been to Aberdeen.
Yeah. So for those of you home, old logging town, depressed as shit. The first words out of my mouth the second we left there was, "Okay, I get why Kurt Cobain killed himself."
There's only
Um,
one place worse on the West Coast in terms of that for me, and I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's Eureka, California.
I've driven through there. Well,
That's all
yeah,
you can do there is drive
yeah,
through it.
yeah. There's also God, when I went to school, the town across like the river from us was Lebanon, Oregon. Uh, those of you at home can probably put together. I went to Oregon State from that, but uh, when you cross the river from the university town to the non-university town, it was like night and fucking day.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. That
You
being
know,
said, we should get into the fucking episode, or we'll never
yes,
do it. We'll just talk. I miss you though, man. I miss when we were only an hour apart.
yes, I miss it too.
We've got to think of a
Uh,
good schedule to actually record on, like on a regular basis.
yeah, because if we just
Do
do
you?
shit
You
patchwork,
don't ever. You work a normal schedule, I assume, like 8 to 5.
8 to 5, yeah. Well, I
8 to 5.
in practice it's more like 7 to 6 since I have to catch my bus at like 7:20 and then I walk
What do
home.
you mean? You're working a fucking 10-hour day?
Well, working, I'm on the bus for
Mm,
about an hour and a half to 2 hours of that, but
fair. We should do.
dude, the
But
entirety of everybody above just the rank and file shit kickers at my job are all Hitlerites.
well,
Not
that's
actually
usually what they
Hitlerites,
are.
but
Middle
they're all
management is
Trump
the most
voters.
Hitler possible position.
Oh my god,
I
I
aspire to be middle management, though. I never want to be actually in charge, but I don't want to be a shit kicker forever. You want to be like a. You want to be like a managing director.
ooh, yeah, that's a good shit.
Be
Uh,
getting an MD title. Perfect. All right, let's do this shit because we're talking about something near and dear to my heart today: the many republics of Spain. How do
wait,
you
are
want to
we?
kick? Aren't we doing the Reef War?
We're doing the Rift War, and we're also just doing just a general crisis in West Asia, North Africa during the interwar.
Is it not Reef? Is it Riff?
Riff. I've always pronounced it Riff.
I've
If
always
you
said
know better
Reef.
than me, I'm Reef. Let's go with Reef.
I want to go with
Yeah,
Reef. It's
the
near and dear to
Reef
my heart because
War.
I'm sure as shit I've had family members of mine died in it.
I I mean your family is like from the Spanish colonization of Sicily, right? So
What?
aren't you? I thought you were Southern Italian, and you just have a lot of Spanish blood.
Nah, my mom. Part of my mom's family is Italian. My like
Okay.
50% of my background is southern Spain.
Mm, okay.
I'm like a.
Because
I don't know
we
if you can
always
say
joke
this
about
anymore,
you
but I'm like a
being.
Moor, I guess probably. Like my family were probably Moorish Spaniards.
Yeah, or like people who were there whose ancestors picked up Islam and started speaking Arabic, and then the Spanish came in.
I know. Maybe that's why it feels so natural for me to write.
Hmm?
I loved Arabic. I took Arabic in college. It's like my favorite fucking
I
subject ever. I was the
yeah, it's an
only
interesting
person in
language.
there not taking it to join the State Department. I was just there for the love of the fucking game. Because
Yeah,
day one, there were only like fucking 10 of us in this class. And day one, the professor was like, "Why are you guys learning Arabic?" And everybody's like, "Oh, I want to work in the State Department. I want to work in the Foreign Service." I was like, "I'm just here because this is cool."
the State Department.
Yeah, I know. All right, we get it, CIA.
Yeah, ugh. All right. So, do you want to start off with the Turkish War of Independence, or do you want to start off with the Reef War?
Which one? They happened.
'Cause we could do
Well, like, the
both.
Turkish War of Independence happened first.
Yes. Okay.
Well, we should do
So
that. We should be
we
chronological.
left off. Yes. So we left off the last episode with the start with the Armenian genocide, right? Which is also when the war started to go badly for the Ottomans.
Correct.
At this point, they were fighting the Brits in the Sinai and eventually up into Syria and Palestine. Lawrence of Arabia was doing Lawrence of Arabia things with the Arabs, and there's the Arab Revolt was kicking off, and basically,
I'm so sorry. That won't
no,
happen again. But that was just my car going, "You've been sitting here for a while. We're turning it off."
we're turning it off in case you were killing yourself. Um, so never
You
kill
know what?
yourself.
Never kill yourself. There's
Never
always a
kill
beer at the
yourself.
end of the day. That beer
Um,
hit my hand on Friday night like Mjolnir.
that's fucking right, baby. So the Ottomans are basically have had like the southern chunk, because Yemen at this point was an Ottoman province. And they've been completely cut off from that and that tax base by the Arab Revolt, which is primarily Bedouins, uh,
I
as
don't
well
think
as
Yemen was. I don't think Yemen was.
I believe it was a
What? They
protectorate.
have
I
a
want to say
crazy name that I can't remember. I want to say it's like the Muckawalite
the
Muckawalites.
Muktalite.
Muckalites.
That was only established after the collapse of the
After?
Ottoman Empire, I believe.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
Let me double check on that.
Are you double checking that? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I thought like Yemen and like Oman, like they were kind of semi-independent.
Yeah, the Middle Wakalite Kingdom of Yemen was established in 1918, and it lasted until 1970.
Which, complete aside, but write this down if you're listening. We're going to talk about them in the future because, oh my god, the guy in charge of that kingdom, fucking nutbag. I fucked up my whole research for this goddamn episode because I got sucked into reading about his ass for like an hour and a half.
Dude, I Wikipedia will do that to you. I read about the first Ming emperor for a solid 4 hours instead of doing my job yesterday.
Well, it also, I got sucked into this shit when I was trying to like brush up on like what I know about the Reef War, and I just got like sucked into like random fucking small Spanish named Moroccan provinces.
Yeah. No, we got to do an episode about the rise of the Ming, because holy shit, the Hongwei emperor was like
I don't think I could
Napoleon
make it
tier.
through a Ming Dynasty episode without doing the line.
Ming Dynasty.
Pussy has got me acting unwise.
Yeah. No, but like, and talking about China is going to take up a solid, like, I think, quarter to half of our episodes by the time we end this.
I love
Just
China.
because.
Well, we're never ending this, John. You're doing this until we die.
Well, it will end when we die, and at that point, a quarter to half of the episodes will have been about China or Chinese topics.
Well, by the end of it, they'll be in Chinese because President Xi is coming.
Please, a competent administrator of capitalism, I beg.
Please send 25 Dongfeng 12 missiles to Washington, D.C., please.
Please give us some actual competent technocrats.
Building socialism by never, ever, 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 ever trying to do socialism for the last 40 years.
Yeah, they have the big button. They just refuse to press it.
Nixon, really the greatest politician of all time. Nixon was the most effective politician of all time.
Yeah.
He made China stop doing communism through mouthfuls of cottage cheese.
Yeah, no, like, because, well, the Chinese were never doing communism. The question was if communism was going to be what they do next. Because this is a massive tangent.
They haven't really done a lot of things. Let's stop. Otherwise, we'll do this for the whole episode. Just going to be China. And it's going to be like, this is about the Reef War, and then it's just China.
Well, in 200 years, everything will be China. So
I hope so.
Inshallah, the World Republic will come.
And it will be speaking fucking Mandarin.
Yeah, the World Republic, if it happens, I'd say there's a 70% to coin toss chance that the core is going to be in northern China.
We're splitting the world into two globe-spanning republics, one that speaks Mandarin and one that speaks Cantonese.
It's like that one map where it like divides everything between Armenians, Kurds, and Palestinians. Or
that's true. What are we?
Well, it's entirely off of.
I think Americans are
Radiant.
The Kurds of the world.
No, I think because going off the map. No, I don't remember if it was Armenians, but it was. No, it was definitely Armenians and Kurds, but I don't remember if the third one's Palestinians. It should be Palestinians. I think because the way it was doing is just it just from the center midpoint just radiating out. I think by that we end up being Palestinian.
That's awesome. We
Um,
should. What if we gave? What? Okay, hold on. Let's redo Sykes-Picot in our minds real quick.
yeah.
What if we put the Palestinians, the Kurds, and the Armenians, and we gave them one big state,
Well, that's
and
what
we
we should do
connect
with
it,
Israel.
connect it with a lot of little land bridges, right?
Mm,
And let's say let's divide. Let's think. Okay, there's only a few countries in the Middle East with a strong national identity because they already existed, and that's like let's ruin Syria for this
yeah. Well,
because
you,
they're
you
a
can't really
functioning.
ruin Syria anymore at this point. I don't think.
It's like 50%. Just wait. They gotta let me be in charge for a day. I'm gonna solve all of this shit.
No, okay, here's the thing. I know for a fact I would make things so much worse because I would try to
Not
solve
me.
it and just do it very badly. Like
Not me.
I
I
joked
know
at
a good
one
way to
point.
solve most of the Middle East's problems.
I joked at one point, if you send me back in time and put me into Stalin's body in like 1922, I would not only make the exact same mistakes that he and his clique made, I would make entirely new
Make
ones.
new ones. If they send me back in time, they don't even have to send me back very far. You send me back to 1993. I'm gonna just tell Saddam, like, hey, you don't want to do this. You need to move the facility further underground.
Okay, honestly, if you get Saddam not to invade Kuwait, you're probably buying him another like
30
maybe eight
years.
years,
No,
like
you're
a
buying
couple
him.
years.
You're buying him forever because Saddam would have loved to help us invade Afghanistan.
That is true. What he would have done is he would have helped us invade Iran.
Well, no, he would have helped us invade Afghanistan so that he could surround them.
Yes, and then he would help us invade Iran.
Yeah, he was an American fucking ally right up until we did something he didn't like.
Listen to Blowback Pod, folks.
New season of Blowback coming out, everyone. I hate to advertise
Dude,
another podcast, but they're doing Cambodia.
Yeah, which is like one of those like what oh God, it's so insane how
My grandpa was in
everything is our
Cambodia.
fault. It's really?
Cambodia and Laos.
Ooh. Yeah. It's crazy how everything's our fault.
Well, I can name one thing that's not our fault.
The Turkish the
The
partition
formation
of Turkey.
of the formation of the ethno state of Israel.
Oh, that
We didn't do that.
Well,
That's
no,
Britain's fuck
the
up.
Brits did it. The Brits
That's
did
Britain's fuck up, and they think they're Pontius Pilate. They washed their hands.
We
of
just
that
backed
shit.
him to the hilt after the Brit. Oh no! Did I lose you?
I solved the world's problems. There will not be a single soul alive on that fucking island when I'm done.
Yeah, no, dude. As I was kind of another server, I was doing just kind of freeform riffing, and
I'm
an
gonna
idea I
force the
came
top
up
tier
with
guys to get back together.
was Turkish JDPON administration over the United Kingdom.
They already kind of have that. There's a kebab shop on every corner.
No, I was
connected.
going to say the barbershops.
Ones where they're squeezing lemon on the back of your head and slapping the shit out of you.
That does sound kind of nice. I'm not going to lie.
I guess, but I fucking hate the English. I do want to get. Did you watch Top? You seem like you were a Top Gear kid.
I actually wasn't.
Really?
I only watched a couple episodes for whatever
Not a car
reason.
guy?
No. Well, okay.
Oh.
I am kind of now, but I wasn't as a kid.
Go watch all of it. Honestly, it's such a good show. But
Yeah.
when they moved to Amazon and they started calling it the Grand Tour, which is fine, they started doing a lot more like specials where they would do fun shit. But the show ended. Their last special ever came out last week, and I watched it, and I'm a grown man on my couch at 10 p.m. bawling. Because it was such an important part of my childhood. I was like watching these three English oafs like try and traverse the world in like shitbox cars. And they were never, and they're not politically, but they were never like an Anthony Bourdain type. But they were always they would always like, even for like bunch of three old British grouches, some of whom definitely vote for the Tories.
Oh yeah.
They would always make very astute observations about like, yeah, we fucked this up, huh? Like, it was always just
like
very
the
interesting.
Argentina episode.
that one is still just funny. That
Yeah,
one won't ever not be funny because it's never not funny to make fun of Argentina.
yeah,
They are the
absolutely.
Italians of the New World.
Well, they literally are because that
They're
country
mostly
is like
Italians.
it's so. I like to joke that the United States is just cos. All the white people here are just Anglophone Germans doing various kinds of cosplay. Like
Mm-hmm.
not by blood, if not by blood, then very much
Yeah,
culturally, considering how
yeah.
much beer we drink. I the same thing is true of Argentina, but they're Italian and Hispanophone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you know we've been recording for 33 minutes and we haven't touched the topic of our episode yet?
It's fine. This can just be free association riffing with
This is like a bonus episode.
yeah.
You know
It's a
why?
preview for when we start doing the
Yeah,
Patreon and
yeah.
we just
You know what?
release
Let
bonus
here
episodes.
let's give a brief overview. Here's what's going on in Turkey in 1918. All right, so the Treaty of Lausanne, nightmare. All right, what that gets signed?
Treaty of Sèvres at this point. The Treaty of Lausanne was
Oh,
not
Lausanne was the
until 1923.
correct. Should we talk about the land carving up that Lausanne created?
Sèvres.
No,
Sèvres.
Lausanne was the one with the
Lausanne.
was the carving
No.
up of the peninsula, right?
Treaty of Sèvres was the carving of the peninsula that incipiated the War of Independence, which installed the Republican government, which negotiated the Treaty of Lausanne,
Which did
which is the
Lausanne.
current. Yes.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about Sèvres' horrifying thing. All right, so a lot of you may know because they even teach this in school, which is quite honestly astounding. But they teach you about the Sykes-Picot Agreement. Yeah, everybody kind of learns about it in school, maybe for a couple minutes, maybe not. I don't know. I was a dork, so I loved it. Um, so the Sykes-Picot Agreement was drawn up originally between three powers: the French, the English, and the Russians. In I want to say the summer of 1917, just before Russia collapsed. And
Russia had well, yeah, Russia was in the process of collapsing at that point. I'd say because
yeah,
uh,
the dominoes had already fallen.
yeah, the provisional government was probably was I if was probably the one that negotiated that one, and that one was just a
Well, the
in
provisional government,
February until October was just a long
the
collapse.
provisional government, as I believe, one of their last acts was to publish the agreement.
Yes. Well, no, I believe it was the Bolsheviks that did that after they took the Foreign Office
Oh,
in
maybe that.
October.
Might be that. So
Yeah.
anyway, the Sykes-Picot Agreement was an agreement between these three foremost European powers who already had interests in the Middle East to carve up the Ottoman Empire, which at this point was very clearly not going to make it. All right,
It
not going
was
to make it.
imploding at this point.
Everybody was kind of aware at this point that the Ottoman Empire, in its current form, was not going to survive, and it was not going to hold any land really outside of the central Anatolian Peninsula by this point. So the European powers got together and decided, all right, this place is rich in resources. It's the Holy Land, so it's got some political capital. And it is a lot of wide open space where we know there's oil that we can exploit for our own futures and our own economies.
There was
So
a
they sit
whole
down.
incident during the final collapse of the Ottoman Empire where the Brits in Mesopotamia made a mad dash for Mosul entirely for the oil fields, which was beyond the peace agreement. It was really only the only reason why Mosul is part of Iraq now and not Turkey is because of the Brits basically
The
forced it at
Brits.
gunpoint.
Yeah. So so at this point in time, the Ottomans are like well aware that they are the most oil-rich power on the planet Earth, and they had been attempting to start exploitation of these oil fields before the First World War. Obviously, throughout it, they kept trying, but the industrial power that they could wield was needed elsewhere. So there is one large oil field outside of Mosul, which is supplying like the entirety of the fucking Central Powers with oil. And for a little bit, other people who weren't really involved. Um, that fuck, who gives a shit about that? The French and the British are the real fucking bad guys here. The Russians were being bad guys, but that problem solved itself. So go read about the Russian Revolution. So the French and the British sit down and they carve up the Middle East into a series of client states where they will install local authority to kind of rule in their name. But that's the Sykes-Picot Agreement. So that divides up essentially everything south of from Mosul south
Yeah.
all the way to the fucking Red Sea at the tip of the Arabian Peninsula. All of this is divided into French and English client states. Um, However, there's another piece of this with the Treaty of Sèvres, or
Yes.
the Treaty of Sèvres, where the Anatolian Peninsula itself is they're doing border gore, folks.
Oh,
There's
it's
no
so
good way to say
bad.
this. They're doing a Paradox Games border gore. So
Yeah.
everybody who's ever had a fucking bone to pick with the Ottoman Empire decides to get in on this. Namely, the two biggest offenders here of just doing whatever the fuck they want with no real fucking reason are the Greeks and the Italians. So
Yeah.
we'll start with the Italians because it's easier to explain.
It's a sphere of
So
influence. They
correct.
get a sphere of influence on the southern Anatolian coast. The
Correct. The southern
Greeks,
Anatolian coast, and they get to own outright the Dodecanese Islands.
yes,
So these islands, which are important for another war in about 20 years, feature large natural harbors that are used by the Italian. Well, previously they've been used by the Ottoman Navy for the last 1,000 years, but now are going to be used by the Italian Navy as a major staging point in the Eastern Mediterranean. They also get a claim over a decent amount of the southern Anatolian Peninsula. It includes some decently large cities that I can't pronounce the name of because they're Turkish. You're just going to want to look at a map. Everything on the southern coast, that's Italian. All the way to the
it's
border of Syria.
it's not strict Italian control. There would still be these would still be nominally Ottoman territory because here's the thing: in
Yeah,
terms of
it's like
it,
analogous to the carving up of China.
exactly, yeah, and uh, so yeah, and the Italians get a sphere of influence in southern Anatolia, and the Greeks. If I remember right, it was either they outright annex it or there was
I know
going
the
to
Greek
be a
part.
referendum
I know
about
the
it.
Greek part.
Yeah. Uh,
So the Greeks are attempting
there's
to do something later on. I don't know if it's referred to it at contemporaneously, but this is the Megali idea.
yes,
And the Megali idea, as it kind of sounds, is just the mega Greek. Um, and so the Megali idea states that essentially the western fringes of the Anatolian Peninsula, up to and including modern day Byzantium, Constantinople, Istanbul, whatever the fuck we're calling it at this point, uh, is all historically and contemporaneously Greek as of 1918. That these are Greek areas, and so the original treaty does allow for the full annexation of these areas
yes.
by the Greek government. Mind you, at this time, for anybody at home who maybe knows what Greece looks like on a map, it does not fucking look like that on a map at this point. It doesn't even have a border that touches Turkey. At this point in
Yes.
time, Bulgaria owns the entire little northern arm of Greece, so it touches the Mediterranean.
Yeah,
Um,
which is a
I don't.
result, if I remember right, of
Of
did
a
Greece
different
get
war.
that from Bulgaria, or was that occupied by
Yes.
Bulgaria during the war?
No, 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 no. Bulgaria had previously occupied that, and I want to say the first Balkan War.
Okay.
I don't want to make statements here, but that probably actually just is historically Bulgarian territory.
And the way, okay, here's the thing, important thing for people at home: ethnicity does not match up at all with borders at this point in European history. It doesn't
No,
really
it's yeah, yeah.
match
So
up with borders
the borders that you know
until
today,
1945.
yeah, the borders that you know today are the fact that it seems like people fit so homogeneously on their side of them is due to genocide and population transfer. Um,
Population transfers and
yeah,
heavy air quotes here.
which is we're saying genocide light.
Ethnic
Um,
cleansing.
yeah. So the Greeks get to say all of this is Greek. And they are, the Ottomans surrender and they agree to the Treaty of Sèvres. Like the Ottoman government fucking signs the document.
Yes,
Now that's not
because
accepted by the Turkish populace writ
no,
large.
no, it is
But
not.
um, but at this point, you have a few things happening all at once. So the Ottoman central government has completely collapsed.
Yep.
There is a genocide happening in the east, and down into Mesopotamia in areas that are still under nominal Ottoman control.
Yeah.
Um, However, the British have now taken over all of modern day Iraq. The French have taken all of Lebanon and Syria, and a little bit into Jordan and Iraq, I'm assuming. But the
the
British have already
interior.
taken.
So the Levantine coast is controlled by the French, but the
Correct.
interior is controlled by the Arabs at this point, by an Arab
Yeah,
provisional government.
that's still like Hashemite aligned tribes.
Yeah, it's a provisional government that is. They will eventually appoint Faisal as the king of Syria, but they have not yet. Uh,
Correct. Right now, this area is just like they control
it,
Damascus and Beirut. Like they.
it's Damascus, Homs, and a bit in the Euphrates, I believe.
Yeah, we had to talk about Haiti at some point.
Ooh, yeah. We'll get into that. There's a whole Haiti
Such a
crisis.
goof. But such a fucking stupid thing to argue about. To be so honest. But
Yeah.
so right now that's what's going on in the Arabian Peninsula. The British, who have created a monster, almost immediately lose control of said monster. In that the series of proto-states that exist along the coast of the Red Sea. And proto-state, I don't mean that these are backwards places. These are just places that have not had their own self-government in somewhere between 500 and 1,000 years.
We're seeing
Uh,
fast-forwarded state formation happening here, basically.
yeah,
Um,
you're watching national struggles kind of pop up, get absorbed, pop up again, get absorbed by a bigger group, and so on and so forth.
yeah, the
So
Sauds are doing like Paul Atreides shit.
the Sauds are doing Pol Pot shit in
They're
the
doing
desert.
Paul Atreides shit.
So let's just we'll get the Arabian Peninsula out of the way for you guys because it's kind of fucking unimportant after this. Um, so the House of Saud, it really, honestly, truly plays some incredibly savvy politics. They are a bunch of backwards nut jobs, but they are incredibly savvy politicians, especially in this era, and they managed to take themselves from the House of Saud kind of ruling over kind of a backwater that they had ruled
Basically,
since
just the area around Riyadh.
that they had ruled since the mid 18th century, and they kind of leveraged the strife of the Ottomans falling apart, and the immediate conflict rising up between, especially the coastal Arabian states where most of the people are, um, and they play it to their advantage, and they kind of come screaming out of the desert, um, very massive cavalry formations, and they manage to either make a deal with to absorb, or they outright do besiege cities and take land, to kind of forge an Arabian state, which is relatively stable for the first few years. But it is not the Saudi Arabia that you would see on the map today. It is missing the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. So
Yeah,
the
the
Sauds kind of take all the
what's that?
central desert land and some of the coastal strip to the north of Mecca and Medina up to kind of modern day Jordan, which at this point Jordan is not a real thing, and is
It's part of it's
technically Arabia.
yeah, it's administered as part of the provisional government in Damascus. Uh,
Yes and no. In reality,
yeah,
it is the base of power of the Saud's rivals, the Hashemites.
yes,
Like Amman is kind of the counter Saud capital of the Arabian Peninsula.
yeah.
And so they are fighting. Let's just we'll just get clear the air here. The Hashemites fucking lose that bit, and the Sauds managed to take essentially the entirety of the Arabian Peninsula outside of the Emirate of Oman, which kind of reestablishes itself. It was never really a part of the Ottoman Empire, so much more maybe a semi-autonomous protectorate.
No, they were never even
Um,
a protectorate. They were primarily a British. I don't
were
know
they
if
a
they're
British
British.
protectorate after a
I
while?
think so. They
This is a
the,
part
oh
of the world where most of the colonial powers don't. I don't know. I don't want to say they don't give a shit, but like Oman was quite wealthy. Um,
Oman had its own small Indian Ocean empire that peaked in the
yeah, Oman had its
1850s,
own colonial empire,
which
and it saw the writing on the wall. The Omanis, where like it's not like they can really ever challenge the British in an open fight.
Yeah.
And so they kind of took the smart way. We'll be savvy here. They took the intelligent option of saying, okay, yeah, on paper, whatever, I'll answer to you.
They
And then
negotiated a
they just,
merger with the British Empire,
yeah,
essentially.
and then they just kind of did whatever the fuck they wanted for the next 100 years. Um,
There's this weird divide where there's like a coastal kingdom and like an inland theocracy that eventually resolved in favor of the kingdom.
yeah, yeah. For a while, the capital of Oman was in Zanzibar off the coast of fucking East Africa, which is its whole other new thing that we're not going to talk about now because we could talk about that all day. Um,
Yeah.
but so that's what's going on. Yemen is forging itself in fucking fire and blood. They
Yeah.
are fighting the Saudis and they are beating the Saudis, and then the Saudis are coming back and beating them, and then we'll skip fast forward through a lot of shit. They become a theocratic fucking nightmare. It goes on until 1971.
And this is in northern Yemen. Southern
This
Yemen at
is
this
North
point
Yemen.
is
South
is a
Yemen,
collection of British protectorates at this
yeah,
point.
and it is mostly fucking empty. So
Yeah.
there are not a
It
lot of people
still
there.
is empty.
And you at home might be going, Yemen seems like an east-west oriented country. That's because it is. So South Yemen is really just East Yemen, and North Yemen is really just West Yemen. So if you're
Yeah,
looking at
and
them on a map, that's what they look like. We'll move on back to the Levant, where people fucking live instead of like, guys. The British and the Hashemites reach a very fun little deal where a Hashemite, which is they're a dynasty, they've been around for a long time.
yeah,
They're quite old actually. I want to say they're one of the oldest dynastic families like that still has people alive.
they trace their family tree all the way back to the Prophet.
Yeah, and they have in some form or another managed to administer the places where they live, even under Ottoman rule and under the
Yeah.
original caliphates. So a Hashemite is placed on the throne in the following countries. Keep up. Iraq, Kuwait, Jordan, Syria.
Okay. Syria is a bit more complicated than that because
It's far more complicated than that, but he is a Hashemite.
He is a Hashemite, but what happens is Faisal is crowned king by the provisional government in Damascus. The French object to this because they had been promised Syria as essentially a client state, and this was an assertion of independence, essentially. So there's a very short, sharp war. It only lasts about 4 months between the French and the Hashemites in the provisional government in Syria. This does Faisal loses, and so he gets expelled from Syria, and as a consolation prize, and what had also happened in Iraq was there had been a revolt against the colonial mandatory administration. They were actually originally going to basically turn Iraq into like Indian or Israel.
Yeah, they were going to do it like a horrible condominium.
Yeah, the original British plan was to turn Iraq into basically a Punjabi Rajasthani settler colony. Obviously, the locals didn't like this. They didn't like this, and they revolted. And so they said, "Okay, fuck, what are we going to do?" And so Faisal had just been kicked out of Syria. And said, "Okay, hey, here's this kingdom. Give us some basic rights and let us drill some oil, but you can have this kingdom." And they gave his brother Jordan, and I don't know if the Kuwaiti guy was if he was his brother or his cousin or whatever, but
yeah. I do want to also just
listen to blowback.
We'll make a blanket statement here and say that all of these countries are outside of Syria and Lebanon. I'd say Lebanon is definitely a distinct political entity in some form. It had existed as a distinct administrative part of the Ottoman Empire, so it did exist. But I will say Iraq and Kuwait specifically are made up.
Artificial division.
They are created, and Kuwait is specifically created to be a British fucking naval base.
Yes, Kuwait. I contend to Iraq, but Kuwait is absolutely an artificial creation. Iraq has a distinct Iraq and Mesopotamia have a very distinct separate history. Iraq is a merger of the Mesopotamian area and the kind of the southern fringe of Kurdistan. That is absolutely an artificial creation, but Mesopotamia has its own
the
history
Mesopotamian
inside the Ottoman Empire
identity.
in the same way as Lebanon.
Yeah, the Mesopotamian identity is is like forcefully destroyed in 1918.
Yes.
So but previous to this, like people like Baghdad, Baghdad has always been a world city. Um, this was a like the people from the area, which is the where the Euphrates and the Tigris come together and reach the sea. All right, this is Mesopotamia. This is the cradle of fucking Western civilization, essentially.
Yeah.
Um, they have a very distinct identity that they still hold on to today. It's also like Iraqis don't always consider themselves Arabs.
Yeah. It's
Like there are
complicated.
a lot of lingering things that go on in modern day, the world over there, where like
Mesopotamia only became solidly part of the Arab world instead of the Persian world around the mid 1600s.
and
Um,
quite honestly, it's solidified now.
yeah,
Like in 1918, at the end of the First World War, is when they like really, and especially at the hands of the West, to kind of keep it out of the Persians like
yeah,
sphere, kind of like solidify like no, you're Arabs.
yeah,
That's why like you see a lot of fun, like you see things sometimes, and it's like they don't really look Arab Iraqis. Like you see a lot of videos of like Saddam's government in the 80s and 90s, and like one of their more famed butchers generals is like a redhead.
yeah. Well, honestly, the complicated thing about Arabic identity and ethnicity is that nobody really looks Arabic. It's
Yeah,
the way
everybody's
I,
kind of basing it off of what like the Saudis look like, I guess,
yeah,
ethnically.
being
And I
Arab
would
is
say
a
like
lot about like,
they're Arabs.
yeah. Being Arab is like being American insofar as it's primarily a linguistic and cultural identity. You don't necessarily have to be born an Arab; you can
Explain
become an
as if
Arab.
shawarma, but
Yeah,
for
exactly. Yeah, like
yeah, so like, but you know, you see a lot of it, like Syrians and Lebanese people. Syrians less so, but Lebanese people, like, they're never going to say they're Arab. They're not. They're not. They're like Phoenicians.
I mean, they speak Arabic, and the
Yeah, they
main
speak
difference
Arabic.
in Lebanon is religious, and I do think that the idea that they are Phoenician and not Arabic is kind of a cope. Um,
Yeah, there's
the
a
thing is with
strong
this
argument
identity,
to be made that Lebanon is a very very funny geopolitical mistake. Um,
yeah, it basically it was created by the French as like Christian Israel. It's
it
like
as
as a state for the
yeah as
Maronite
like
Christians.
Christian Syria and Christian Israel, even though like 60% of the people there are not Christians.
Like most, like until the Civil War, the whole people talk a lot the confessionalism in the Lebanese parliament. Until the Civil War, that was mostly just a way to ensure a Maronite majority in government.
Yeah,
Um,
Lebanon makes me upset, but
well,
it does.
it definitely makes me upset now. The food is incredible, though.
Lebanese food and Lebanese people are some of the best like people I've ever met. Like some of the kindest,
Yeah,
worldliest people. Especially like somebody like from Lebanon. Like you'll never meet a better fucking mediator than a Lebanese person. Because I think
yeah.
like going to the grocery store is an argument. But
It's like
and
Switzerland in that
Lebanese
way,
food is like all of the best Middle Eastern food you can possibly imagine, and like also Greek food.
dude. So my parents got takeout from a Lebanese Indian restaurant in Seattle last night, and
Yeah.
I had some leftovers for lunch. The lamb was so good it made me angry.
Dude, it's so good. But anyway, so these states are just created. All right, they're drawn on the map and they're created. And yeah, almost immediately things go obviously very south. And there are a few conflicts. Just say a few. At
Yeah,
this point in time, Israel's but a twinkle in the eye of the English, and it exists as a place called Mandatory Palestine, where there is, let's just call it, an uneasy truce broken by some violence. But there is an uneasy truce between the rapid influx of Jewish people to Palestine, and the already indigenous, they live there, Muslim Arabs. They're there.
yes,
They've lived in fucking Jerusalem this whole time. All right. And so have Jewish people. We're gonna like make that so clear right now. Jewish people already fucking live there, as well as Muslims and
yeah,
European Jews come to Palestine and immediately start doing racism against not only the Arabs, but the Arab Jews who already live there.
Yeah, it's very much a case of settler. It's they immediately start doing settler colonialism as soon
Yes.
as the mandate is set up. Like Zionists start just flooding in there, and
So it's not great immediately. The
no,
British realize this. They do a few things. None of them really work. And then it gets more complicated after the Second World War. But for now, let's just say they're doing a few things and none of them are working. Um,
yeah,
and the same kind of goes for Syria and Lebanon and Iraq stabilizes. And I think we can leave this area alone because the next
yes,
time anything cool happens, cool being like something crazy, is around the time of the Second World War, where you start to see something something fun happens in Iraq, um, and also for some reason Syria sides with Vichy France. Um, and then I don't know what Lebanon is doing. I guess they also just did that.
yeah.
Um,
The reason why the colonies, except for French Equatorial Africa, sided with Vichy France is because even though it's a fascist government, there was legal continuity. Vichy France was the
well, yeah, they
legal,
were the legal successor of
yes,
what is that? The Second Republic?
of the Second Republic, yes, and so the Free France was technically speaking an illegal insurgency that was backed by the Allies. They just happened to be the
The good
I don't feel
guys.
comfortable calling De Gaulle a good guy.
Free
But they were the
France
less bad guys.
ideally is the good guy, I guess, in this situation.
Okay, the thing is, the reason why I do not like De Gaulle is because, like, about around 1944, he made a statement that says, "Yeah, Free France is never going to give you guys the colonies independence or even autonomy."
Yeah,
Uh,
good thing he used all their fucking able-bodied men as troops, though.
fuck, the French. Okay, here's the thing: the English, British colonialism, fucked nightmare. The French were so much worse.
I made
Like,
this point when we did the Guerrilla Radio Show Congo series, in that if you were going to be colonized, you would rather the British
yes,
than essentially any other European power. There is a reason. There is a there is a reason why, like, let's take the continent of Africa as our example because it's kind of the only and the best. There is a reason why former French colonies do so poorly compared to former English colonies.
well, it's because they're not former colonies; they're neo colonies. They're
Well,
still
they're not
colonies.
only are they still colonies, but their colonial administration
Yeah,
was not, the English colonies. If you were colonized by the English, other than really America, I would say
yeah.
America and Canada, if you were colonized by the English, they didn't generally
Well, also
kill.
Australia.
Yeah, if you were colonized by the English, they didn't generally kill all of you. There's no good way to say that. They generally took the administrative state that was already in place and kind of subsumed it into their own.
Yeah,
So if you were
it still wasn't good.
colonized, it's not good. None of it is good. There's no good way to explain what it is.
Yeah.
But let's say you're a Kenyan and it's whatever they got. I don't even know when they got Kenya. Did they get Kenya out of World War One?
No, that was
No, that was Tanzania.
Tanganyika.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
let's say
Well, it
let's
wasn't
say
Tanzania and
Tanzania and Malawi, right? They got out of World War One.
Tanzania. No, it was just Tanganyika. Tanzania is the merger of Tanganyika and Zanzibar. Zanzibar was
Correct.
British,
Correct.
Tanganyika was German, and the British got Tanganyika, and the two merged after independence.
Okay. Let's say you're like a mid to upper level administrator in a pre-British colonial, like
One
Kenyan
of like
state.
one of like the Omani protectorates
Yeah,
or
like
like
these are
splinter
generally
kingdoms.
they're generally centered around the coast. They're not very large polities, but they exist.
Yeah.
And they are like usually forcefully taken in a war, a very short war because you're the British Empire, but in a war that the British then now they're in control. But the British are going to walk into your city. Let's say it's fucking Nairobi. The British are going to walk into Nairobi and say, okay, you guys were running this before we got here, and you were doing a fine job. So we're going to let you keep running it. We're going to pay you in British pounds, but you are going to enforce the laws that we say you need to enforce. We are going to tell you that any laws you may have right now that we don't like, you're going to stop enforcing. And you're going to do everything that we ask you to do. And we let you live. We let you live in a nice house, and we pay you money. That's how the British administrative state works because quite honestly, they're just the British Empire is constrained by the population of the British Isles. They can't do what a land power in Europe is doing, where they're just saying, "All right, 50 million poor people from the countryside, get out there, take it
Go
over."
kill.
Yeah, so they're doing it. They subsume administrative states, and generally, from as an objective point of view as I think I can muster, they generally streamlined these multitudes of small administrative states into one larger one for the greater colonial region that they're in, right? So that's how the British approach colonialism. So when the British leave, as long as you're not India, when the British leave, and give you your independence after you basically say do it or we're gonna fucking kill every. So when the British eventually leave and they say, all right, you can have your independence, whatever. We're gonna meddle in your economy forever. That's what happens. Um, the administrative state that gets left behind is generally a little better equipped to administer the state. They can generally administer the state that they're in semi-effectively. It varies. There's no good way to say it, but we'll say on average. Let's say I'm going to make up numbers, folks, but let's say on average, 60% of post-British Empire, post-colonial states, they can effectively administer themselves. Now, this is not to say that they don't have the same sort of ethnic strife that other post-colonial projects have, because the British did just also draw lines on the map. So there are issues, but the administrative state left behind is generally British in nature, and it is generally pretty bureaucratic, and they can generally effectively administer themselves. This is to draw a huge contrast to and basically all the other European powers. If you really want to learn more about how a non-British colonial project looks, check out the Guerrilla Radio Show Congo series. We really go into depth about like what Belgian colonization looks like what their project looks like. But to give you a brief overview, at least I'll try to be brief, of what the French project looks like, it is extremely resource extractive. The French project exists generally to make the French Empire, French colonial empire, as rich as possible. So the French have a habit of doing kind of the opposite of the English in that if they show up in a place, and the Sahel is going to be our example here because that's where the French really concentrated a lot of their colonial efforts in Africa. They'll show up. There are pre-existing fucking states, especially in the Sahel. Prior to European contact, the Sahel is quite honestly, I wouldn't say they are much different than in terms of like overall development. It's like taking over the Inca Empire again. These are like very advanced societies. They lack the industrial revolution. They don't have the industrial revolution in these areas yet. It's something that gets kind of imported with colonialism, but these are highly competent, very well organized, cohesive states that have their own politics, their own history, their own colorful past. When the French arrive, usually with firearms and artillery. So if you're Mali, which has a history that spans so far back that it is written about in the fucking Bible, like these African kingdoms, they are very, very wealthy. They are very, very, for the most part, they're no more unstable than a European power at the time. But they are, from European eyes, they're somewhere in the 16th century still. So in the 18th century, when where the 18th and early 19th centuries, when the European powers show up and basically say, "You're mine now," after the fucking Congress of Berlin. These are states that are in the early 16th century still. They wield professional armies. They have a highly developed trade system, everything
They
you
have
would expect.
firearms.
And they do have firearms. They just do not indigenously produce them,
Yeah.
for the most part. Firearms are an imported luxury. So among the militaries of the Sahel, these are few and far between. And they are generally only for elite troops, and they do not use the same tactics as a European army. They are very much, they probably, in terms of like firearms and weapons of war, they're like 200 years behind the Europeans. So they show up, the French show up, and they fucking obliterate every fucking local government in the fucking region. So everything from modern days Guinea-Bissau, which I think was Portuguese, but everything from there
Yes.
all the way to the fucking border of Ethiopia on the other side of the continent becomes French. And the French do not do what the British do, where they leave the administrative state intact and then become its overlord. They obliterate it and install their own mainland French administrative state, where they send in French administrators who run everything. And these French administrators generally have one goal, which is to extract as much as possible from the population without letting everyone there die. And it is not out of some humanist thing. It is who's gonna be out there doing the work if we let them all die.
Yeah.
And so overnight, this very, very intricate, very, very long storied patchwork of states across the Sahel is kind of wiped out, and the French draw new lines on the map, usually based on whoever was the previous like largest power in the area. So you wind up with like Mali still exists, but it holds a ton of land that historically is not Mali.
Yeah.
You see Niger, same idea, where it holds this like strip on the Niger River, and then just like this huge chunk of the Sahara because the French really didn't know what else to do with it.
Yeah.
The same for like a Burkina Faso, which is a German colony at the time.
No. Upper Volta was French.
No, Upper Volta was German.
Nope, it was not.
Oh, that's Cameroon.
Yeah, Cameroon was German.
Cameroon. Okay, so we see Upper Volta, which is modern day Burkina Faso. We can get into that at another time. And essentially everything across Chad, Sudan. No, not Sudan. Chad. What's the fucking one in between? What's in between?
It's Chad.
What's north of Nigeria?
Niger. It's Chad, Niger,
Niger.
Mali, Mauritania.
Mauritania.
Yeah, that one's on the Atlantic coast, though.
That's on the coast. Okay, so we have this strip, and there are millions of people in this strip because it is the border of the Sahara Desert and the forest belt below it. So this is a green pasture land, decent agricultural output, and the French run it like a goddamn prison colony.
Yeah.
They do not care. They wipe out the administrative state. They purposely stoke ethnic tensions, and they purposely stoke religious tensions because they want a population that's too divided to ever rise up against. And this is kind of what French colonialism looks like everywhere. That's what it looks like in Syria. That's what it looks like in Lebanon. They kind of poke and prod to try and keep everybody from doing everything. Why the fuck did I start talking about this? Anyway, we were making a point about British colonialism.
Yeah.
So the French don't play the game the way that the British play the game. They play it in a far
Evil.
more resource extractive way that does not bode well. That's why they're neo-colonies.
Yeah.
Because the British left and they give a country like Kenya independence, and they don't need to do neo-colonialism to keep the Kenyans, I don't want to say in line, but keep the Kenyans trading with them.
Well, what happened was, I would actually contend that the former British colonies are still neo-colonies. They're just American neo-colonies.
No, they're neo-colonies. They're just not neo-colonies like the French ones.
They're not neo-colonies of a singular power, because the way American colonial market expansion tactics work, it's like what happened in China in the 1890s, where we say you got to have an open door to everybody, but in real
In
terms, since
practice.
we're the biggest boy, that means that they're open to us, and they also have a sideline with China or with Europe or with
Yeah.
Brazil.
I don't mean that they're not neo-colonies. More
Yeah.
so that they, like, the French neo-colonies are independent in name only, whereas Kenya, like the former British colonies, are independent in the fact that, like, a capable administrative state was when you were in the bathroom. I talked about this.
Yeah.
So the British would leave, and there would still be a relatively capable administrative state of indigenous people there
Yeah.
to continue running the affairs of state. However, when the French would leave, which they never really did, but when they would leave, there is no indigenous bureaucracy. And
Yeah.
so these states would that's why I almost want to say all of them, but I don't want to discredit there being one or two that aren't. But almost all former French colonies in Africa are generally a series of military juntas, because the indigenous military force was the only group left in the country with any sort of bureaucracy.
That's kind of what happens in China too. That's what happens
Exactly.
in South Korea too. It's what, like, the military ends up taking over. That's why you have the fucking warlord period in China. It's because the military is the only thing that has any that can build social cohesion.
Yeah,
right?
they're the only bureaucratic force left.
Yeah, and
so that's why you see most political figures in, like, the Sahel are military men, because they're the only people who get any sort of there's the pre-existing structure to support that.
And it certainly doesn't help when the French still control your fucking monetary policy. Which,
correct.
The French, by the way, for those of you aren't in the know, the French, through the European Union, control the monetary policy of most of former French Africa. There's this thing called the African
CFA franc.
The CFA franc. There's technically two of them, but by law, both CFA franc currencies have to be pegged to the euro. So European
and boy, are they pegged in a horrible way.
Yeah.
These are worthless currencies.
Yeah. So the European Union controls the monetary policy of a massive chunk of Western Africa.
Yeah, and which is here's another fun tidbit. It's why generally former British colonies, not anymore, or not in the last 50 years, do you really see a lot of former British colonies having their heads of state killed in the middle of the night, because those former British colonies, because there was a capable bureaucratic state left behind, the British colonial project could continue, albeit in a more subdued manner. But the British, and later on the American colonial project, could continue without destroying the fabric of that society.
Yeah.
Whereas the French, it's the opposite. So when the administrative state left, and there is no administrative state, you immediately get veterans of World War II taking power in these newly created states with no structure, who always pick one of two paths: collaboration with the French regime to ensure their own place and to ensure that their country does not fall apart, which it does anyway, but that's not the point. Or they pick the other path, which is trying to divest themselves from French colonial influence, which 100% of the time results in that person being killed in the middle of the night and having a rival installed in their place.
Yeah. Or Wagner basically taking over like 20%
or
of the country.
If you're the Central African Republic, it's Wagner. All right.
Well,
and if you're in the Central African Republic and you're listening to this, I can only urge you to leave.
I'm sorry.
I don't know how to help. Yeah. All I know is that is definitely a state that was created in a boardroom, and it can't do it.
And I mean, honestly, I think in terms of like veterans of World War II, I think like the prime example of like kind of the third place, which is just to go batshit crazy, is Bokassa.
Yeah.
Doing Napoleon cosplay.
And spending your very limited national wealth on being the king of Central Africa. If you really want to get really upset, go ahead and read the Wikipedia page for the Central African Republic. They update the war map every day. And that has been going on since 1970 something.
Yeah. It's like
Anyway,
them in Myanmar.
yeah, we'll move on from it's bad out there, and colonialism is bad.
The
We
greatest
are
crime in
not
human
pro
history.
colonialism here. I think I originally was making that's what the point I was making was that if you had to be, you would rather the British show up in your town than the French.
Yeah. I think there's an interesting comparison to be made with like the early Iron Age empires in Mesopotamia. It's like the Brits were a lot like the Achaemenids insofar as they were hegemonizing, co-opting
Yeah, they
empire.
subsume. They don't destroy.
The French were the Assyrians, which
They'll
for
burn your
those
cities.
the Assyrians were the first world empire. They thought of themselves as a universal state that had a right to conquer the entire planet. They were the first ones to do that. That is the start of the imperial succession that eventually went to the Achaemenids, then to the Romans, and then to the various medieval empires.
Goddamn Ottomans.
Yeah, to the Ottomans too,
Yeah.
and the caliphates. But the Assyrian imperial strategy was: you show up to a town, you kill every military-aged male in there, you enslave and you either enslave or forcibly transfer everybody else to somewhere else. That's why, God, what's the language that is? Fuck, what's the language? It starts with an A. It's a dead
Akkadian?
language. Not Akkadian. There's a
Assyrian?
Monty Python bit about this. Fuck. But
Assyrian?
it's not Assyrian. It's a language that Jesus spoke, right?
Aramaic?
Aramaic. That's why Aramaic became the lingua franca in the region, is because nobody spoke the language of everybody else, because everybody got shuffled around the board by the fucking, like, the Assyrians were basically like late Bronze Age, early Iron Age Nazis. Like, they only lasted
generous. That's being too generous to the fucking Nazis for how they were.
Yeah, that's true. The Assyrians lasted about 40 years. The Neo-Assyrian Empire lasted about 40 years.
The Assyrians did a genocide unlike the world had ever fucking seen. Like, it affected the total global population.
Yeah. Like, these...
More people died than were born while the Assyrians were fucking around.
Yeah. It's nightmare state. Listen to the Tides of History episodes about the Assyrian Empire. It's genuinely very interesting.
Where the fuck were we going with this?
I don't know.
Guys, this is a show about us ranting about what we think about.
Yes, this is an ADHD
Maybe
episode.
we shouldn't even do topics. We should just pick a thing to start at and see where we
Honestly,
go.
That would be great.
That's honestly not bad, actually. That maybe we should. We're only fucking episode 4. We can do whatever we want.
Yeah, fuck it. Like,
fuck it.
We can make the schizo rambling the entire thing. All right. So I think that might be a podcast.
That might be a fucking podcast.